Hi, this video is about how understanding brain phenomena may help explain anomalous, allegedly paranormal experiences. My name is Jouni Vilkka and this is my channel, TFF, Teacher from Finland. Don't forget to subscribe and click the thumbs up button. As French and Stone acknowledge, it is very natural for people to think of themselves as in some way separate from their body, and in fact most people still seem to, at least to some degree, believe this to be the case. Most people, after all, still believe in traditional religions, and those religions, as do many others, involve belief in a soul or some other kind of spiritual entity that supposedly survives one's bodily death. The soul, of course, does not belong in the scientific worldview. Neuroscientists who study the brain have no need for such an entity in explaining how we function. Consciousness seems to require the brain in order to exist, and our mental processes are clearly dependent on certain areas of the brain and their proper functioning. In some way, the mind is what the brain does. How exactly that happens is known as the hard problem of the philosophy of mind. Another more descriptive name is simply the mind-body problem. For our purposes here, it is enough to be aware that from the point of view of science, consciousness cannot be separated from the brain, and that is why many paranormal claims are considered so extraordinary. As French and Stone explain, a near-death experience, NDE, is one where a person almost dies, often as a result of a heart attack, and reportedly experiences something very unusual. Often this includes an out-of-body experience, OBE, where they feel like floating above their own body, observing their own body as it is being resuscitated. Because this is an interesting phenomenon, many hospitals have tried to collect information from patients who have been saved. That last word already points to a major problem for the alleged phenomenon. All reports of such experiences come from people who did not, in fact, die. I'd like to point out that it is even questionable whether the experiencer needs to be in real danger for this experience to occur. So, does it have anything to do with death at all? As for other evidence, there isn't much, despite the hospitals trying to find some. If OBEs actually do occur, one could expect the experiencers to be able to provide information about certain targets placed in the coronary care units in such a manner as to enable a floating spirit to obtain the information. Lack of such evidence does make a more mundane explanation seem more likely. Some claims about NDEs are based on misunderstandings as crude as considering the stopping of the heartbeat to mean that a person is clinically dead, even though a heart may stop without the person even losing consciousness. Some claims have been made based on an EEG, electroencephalography, recording allegedly showing that the brain had stopped functioning, although EEG only records activity on the brain's surface level. The more vital areas are deeper in the brain, not in the cortex, as French and Stone point out. There are other OBE claims besides NDEs, and French and Stone discuss them as well. Some people claim to be clairvoyant or able to observe places remotely, just by using their mental powers. No convincing evidence for this exists either. Claims have also been made about reincarnation, and that alleged phenomenon is also, of course, an important feature in some religions. Unfortunately, there is no convincing evidence for the phenomenon. False memories about imagined past lives have apparently been created, especially with the help of hypnosis, but that is all. If minds could exist without bodies, then ghosts could also exist. There are countless stories and claims about ghosts, but nothing to make a convincing case that such things are actually real. I will probably return to this topic at a later time, but for now, I will just recommend anyone interested in the subject to check out the investigations of the late Joe Nickell. He provided lots of examples of how to actually investigate such claims scientifically, as opposed to the pseudoscience you may have seen on TV. For anomalistic phenomena, OBE and NDE are fairly common. About 10% of the population claim to have experienced an OBE. It has been estimated that up to 20% of people who have been resuscitated may have had an NDE. Even more common is sleep paralysis, as about half of the population experience it at some point. This is a potentially scary experience that occurs either when falling asleep, the hypnagogic state, or when waking up, the hypnopompic state. It is a paralysis because the person is unable to move, which alone can be scary. This is apparently due to a normal function that prevents the sleeper from injuring themselves by preventing normal movement. The experience is made worse by the intrusion of the REM state, resulting in hallucinations. Or at least this is one explanation for what occurs. It is common for the person's imagination to create explanations for their inability to move, and thus one can imagine a terrible hag crawling on top of their helpless body, a true nightmare. The experience can also be accompanied by a sense of floating, and of course one can easily slip from this semi-conscious state into a proper sleep. Distinguishing between dream and reality can be difficult, especially in those circumstances. It has been theorized that some weird experiences that could easily be interpreted as paranormal might be caused by unusual brain activity. Many studies have found that a fairly high level of activity in the temporal lobes is associated with paranormal experiences, such as OBEs, sensing a presence in the room, apparitions, and so on. There are a number of possible reasons for this kind of activation, including temporal lobe epilepsy, injury in the temporal lobe, or even just random variation that naturally occurs in the population. French and Stone report that patients with temporal lobe epilepsy are particularly likely to report frequent mystical experiences. Scientists have tested transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, on test subjects, causing at least some of them to have similar experiences. Some events involving apparitions and other weird experiences have occurred in the context of fasting, meditation, fatigue, lack of oxygen, and the use of mind-altering drugs. All of these affect temporal lobe activity, as does loss of a loved one. This last is relatively commonly associated with the appearance of apparitions. As an example of a possible neuroscientific explanation of OBEs, French and Stone mention the suggestion that it could be caused by the brain's failure to integrate information received from different senses. Normally, this integration would happen at the temporoparietal junction, especially on the right side of the brain, and it enables the formation of a coherent whole, the sense of self in a body, situated in some way in a given location. If this integration is disrupted, the sense of the embodied self may be disrupted, causing the interpretation of the event as an OBE. NDEs typically involve experiences like going through a tunnel towards a bright light, entering a beautiful place, meeting loved ones, peace and well-being, and the belief that one is dead. Of course, all reports of these experiences are from people who in fact did not die. Some are more unfortunate, reporting to have found themselves visiting hell or some kind of void. So not all the experiences are positive. People who have had near-death experience often display positive after effects, such as no longer being afraid of death, having a second chance at life, and not wanting to waste it on competing with others, but to spend it on something worthwhile. Their religiosity or spirituality may have increased, which I find quite understandable given the powerful experience. Even though people reporting NDEs often claim that their thinking during the experience was clear and their observations lucid, this may actually be an illusion. People suffering from oxygen deprivation, for example, also feel that their thinking is clear when it is in fact anything but, as French and Stone point out. I'll add the very mundane observation that intoxicated people also often fail to realize how much under the influence they are, even believing themselves to be perfectly capable of driving a car. The experience of a dark tunnel in NDEs may well be caused by lack of oxygen, which affects the firing of neurons in the occipital cortex in the back of the brain, where visual information is processed. This is a common experience for military pilots and others who experience strong G-forces. They can cause a blackout and even the loss of consciousness. The G-LOC syndrome, as this phenomenon is called, involves, besides the already mentioned tunnel vision, also seeing bright lights, a sensation of floating, OBE, and short, dreamlike visions of beautiful places, euphoria, and even thoughts of loved ones. French and Stone note that the reports from the pilots experiencing G-LOC did not include mystical insights or life-altering after effects, but this could be because they did not expect to die. One problem with investigating especially claims about NDEs and OBEs, but others as well, is that the accounts given by the experiencers depend on their introspection, and even that often a long time after the event. The hospital interviews of patients who have survived a cardiac arrest are the closest in time, but often these experiences are retold repeatedly a long time after the fact for TV or book interviews, and changes in the stories can be observed. This is to be expected given how constructively memory works, but it means that the stories told much later are not even as reliable as the experiences in themselves might be. Further complicating such investigations is the fact that the ability to communicate such experiences is limited, and the listener will always imagine what is being told differently from the original experience. I have now explained why many paranormal claims seem so extraordinary from the point of view of neuroscience, and how studying how the brain works can explain some paranormal experiences. In the next video, I will look at how cognitive psychology can also shed some light on why people believe weird things. Bye for now. If you wish to support my channel, please click thumbs up, subscribe and share my videos. Any comments on the videos would also be welcome.